Good morning and welcome to Live with Lewis for August 12th, 2004. We're coming to you today live from Lewis and Clark State Park near Onawa, Iowa. And we appreciate you all joining us today, and we've got a good show planned for you today. We appreciate you tuning in. We're going to be talking about boats today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the area we're in, and of course, as always, reviewing what happened 200 years ago on the journey, as well as what's happening as we traverse the same historic corridor that the Lewis and Clark Trail represents today with the Discovery Expedition. First of all, take care of a little business. Of course, we are broadcasting to you live via the internet. We're going to be asking for email questions. As always, we encourage you to send us your email questions at Lewis and Clark. That's LEWISANDCLARK. Lewis and Clark at Clayton. That's CLAYTON.K12.mo.us. Lewis and Clark at clayton.k12.mo.us. We look forward to your email questions. And as always, if you don't have an opportunity to get those questions to us during the broadcast, we encourage you to send them along to us at any time. And of course, if we can't answer your question for some reason, time not permitting or something today, by all means, we'll try to get those email questions returned to you via regular email rather than during the broadcast. But we thank you for tuning in. I mentioned that we're coming to you today from Lewis and Clark State Park, and actually it's an interesting geographical spot located right near the Nebraska-Iowa border with the Missouri River serving as the border between the two states here. And we're just off of 175, Highway 175, just west of Interstate 29, which runs along parallel to the Missouri River on the Iowa side, and just just east of the river and east of Highway 75, which runs parallel to the river on the Nebraska side. So if you're traveling the trail, we encourage you to make your way by here and see this sort of unique little spot along the river. It is actually the lake behind us, which is referred to as Blue Lake, is actually an oxbow lake, and we've talked about oxbows in the past during previous broadcasts. This was a lake that was formed when the river changed its course, and this lake today is sort of the focal point and the centerpiece of Lewis and Clark State Park. This park has been for well over about a half a century. It's been a state park providing recreational resources to folks from Iowa and the surrounding area. And as well, there is a interesting little lodge here, a small lodge that was the result of a WPA project in 1936. The building had fallen into somewhat of disrepair, and during a couple of different reconstruction efforts in 86 and in 94, and then ultimately in 1999, the building was refurbished and reconstructed and is available for rental and special events and that sort of thing today. So we're happy to be here. It's a great facility, and we're going to be talking with some other folks in addition to Butch Bovier, who is our guest today. We're also going to be hopefully joined by a couple of other folks, including some folks who were instrumental in the building of a new interpretive and visitor center here at the park as well. So look forward to all of those things, and again, we're happy that you've joined us today. First of all, we want to talk about what happened to the expedition 200 years ago and the significance of this stretch of the journey 200 years ago. As you may remember last week when we last spoke with you, we had just concluded holding the first council and the bicentennial reenactment of that first council, which took place with Bat Shonatona of the Otoe, Missouri, and took place very near the original council spot down by what is now Fort Calhoun, Nebraska, down near the location of Fort Atkinson, and of course we showed you some video from that last week, and we're going to actually take another look a little bit later at some additional footage from that area. But we want to talk about what happened 200 years ago. The Corps had begun making contact with Native Americans, and this was a real paradigm shift, a real significant change in the journey for them. It had become really a paramount focus for them now that they were entering Indian country, and the diplomatic relations that they had been charged with conducting were now fully underway. And so, as we mentioned last week, on the 3rd of August, they met with the Otoe, Missouri. On the 4th of August, there's a note in the journal, which is that Moses Reed had not returned to camp. And what's interesting is that Moses Reed and La Liberté, one of the French boatmen, had been sent out on a side mission to make some contact with Native Americans. And what happens over the course of the week, and this is probably in many ways at least from the military perspective of the expedition, probably the single most important thing that's happened this week, is the fact that Moses Reed, on the 4th, it's noted that he has not returned. On the 5th, Clark records that he and Lewis have discussed it, and they have reason to believe, and we don't know exactly what it was that led them to believe that, perhaps some information that had been communicated to them by one of the other troops, but they had reason to believe by the 5th that Moses Reed had possibly deserted. A couple of days passed. They continued to wait for him. Ultimately, a party of 4 men was sent out to bring him back. And curiously enough, and this is again, as we understand the military aspect of this expedition, a lot of times we forget how strict and disciplined this organization was. Orders are given to the 4 men who go out to retrieve him and find him that he is to be brought back one way or the other, and the orders actually read dead or alive. And so that's a pretty serious moment in the journey. And in fact, after they have left the Boyer River area down by the council area and down there, and they move up, they pass a small river which they refer to as Soldier River. And undoubtedly, one can only speculate, but undoubtedly there was probably a conversation had, a formation held there with the men to reiterate and impress upon them the serious nature of the undertaking that they were engaged in, and that their responsibilities and their service was indeed as crucial and would be taken as seriously as if they were in a combat situation or somewhere back. Remember, they are now out of the United States. They are a true expeditionary force outside the parameters of what had been considered the United States of America, and so there's a heightened issues of security and safety of the mission and the success of the mission overall based upon the integrity of the organization. So Moses Reed's departure this week becomes a major issue. Ultimately, he is found and brought back. Now, in talking with, you might remember our guest from last week, Matt Sitting Bear Jones, and he talked a little bit to us about the fact that La Liberté, who certainly received assistance from the Oto Missouri, but also that Reed had been offered assistance from the Oto Missouri. At least in their oral tradition of the Oto Missouri, they talk about the fact that when they were among the Oto Missouri, that Reed and La Liberté talked with them about the discipline that was common on the expedition, the floggings and those sorts of things. And the Oto Missouri, as most Native Americans did, found that strict and that brutal corporal punishment abhorrent, and had actually offered Reed the opportunity to receive assistance, and that they would help pirate him away, move him away, and get him to safety so that he could elude the members of the Corps who were in pursuit of him. And yet he made a decision to turn himself in and go peaceably back with them, because he understood that if he failed to do so, that he would probably be hunted down the rest of his life, and certainly would have no opportunity to return to the United States and live out a normal life, which, despite the fact that he was court-martialed and did become the subject of military discipline ultimately upon his return, he did have the opportunity to return and live a relatively normal life subsequent to the expedition. So a lot of interesting dynamic there with regard to the military aspect of it. As well, within this past week, the flora and the fauna becomes a paramount part of the story as well. Lewis has finally, after observing them for quite some time, has been able to actually take specimens of the least tern, which he describes in tremendous detail. In fact, the description of the least tern is perhaps one of his first real exercises in very detailed narrative description of a biological subject. In this particular instance, this small bird which nests on the sand dunes along the way, as well as the plovers, and we're starting to see his interest turning. While he's not journaling as Clark is doing at this point, at least we're not in possession. We don't know if some of those journals have been lost over time, but we do know that what has survived from this particular area is an increase in his anatomical description of birds and other animals. This week as well, in fact, in the area we're located in right now, they shoot what they refer to as a small prairie wolf, which is actually a coyote. And while they actually are unable to collect the animal and take it as a specimen here, it's which they won't do for a few weeks yet. They're observing this animal, and this is a mystery to them. It's another new species that the Corps has encountered. So we're at a very dynamic place in the journey right now. The Native American interaction, the shift in terms of the thinking and the mindset of the men on the expedition, as well as this focus on flora and fauna becoming more paramount. And some of the places that we stopped along the way ourselves included those very same things that were noteworthy to them. The Little Sioux River, Soldier River, of course, just below the Little Sioux, and now we're up near Blackbird Hill, near what is now Decatur, Nebraska, is where the boats are currently located, and that would be near the Omaha Nation. And we've had some tremendous interaction with them. We're going to share that with you in a little bit later. I think right now we'll go to the B-roll. We'll take a look at some of the things that have happened to us over the past week as well. So Jim, if you'll roll that B-roll. As we mentioned last week, we came to you live from Fort Atkinson, Nebraska, there in Fort Calhoun. This was the 1820 to 1828 military installation, the largest and most western in the United States at that time. And here you can see some footage of this facility, and this is the outside of it, quite a large complex. And we're going to not only look at the outside of this massive structure, where nearly 1,000 people were garrisoned here. That included not only soldiers, but tradesmen, and there's some families of some of these folks that were there primarily to protect the early fur trade in this area. The 6th Infantry was stationed here, as well as an elite rifle company. And though by 1827-28, the focus of western expansion had actually taken a southwesterly turn, and this fort actually no longer provided the necessary. It was really no longer necessary. So what you're looking at, of course, is a reconstruction, but it is quite a massive facility, and the interpretive program that takes place there is pretty extensive. They have not only the rebuilt buildings, but they have a group of interpreters there who actually garrison the fort in period uniforms, as well as a number of artisans who share their skills as well. Here you see inside some of the storehouses, and we're looking here at some of the military stores, ammunition, port fires, and their grenades. And I think John Slater mentioned the other day that they used to have 3 of those grenades, but some visitors over the years have pilfered 2 of them, and there's one left there. And there you see headquarters for the 6th Infantry. And this, at one time, was not only was it the largest fort, but and here you see the staff duty officer's desk. This is where generally the business of the day would be conducted. But it really, the force that was here at Atkinson represented fully 1/6, if not 1/5, of the entire United States Army at that time. The U.S. Army had only standing force of about 5,500, 6,000 people. Here you see inside the officers' quarters, relatively palatial. The kitchen, of course, and by this time, transport up and down the river was relatively secure. The tribes that were located along the Missouri River below this area were really pretty cooperative with regard to moving goods and supplies up. And here we are inside the Enlisted Barracks. And you can see there that although the quarters were tight, they're not very much different than we might expect in a modern barracks today. Certainly, my own experiences in a World War II barracks were not very different than what you see here. And of course, a fort like this on the frontier would be required to provide much of its goods itself, things they couldn't continue to send back for things. So they had artisans with them, and carpenters, and all sorts of different things, coopers and tinsmiths. And these folks here that work at the fort today continue these skills. And here you see some of the products made by the tinsmith. And you saw the carpentry area there. And, of course, blacksmith would have been a very, very important part of it. And here are the blacksmiths that are working in their fully functional shop there at the fort are actually working on a hinge. And this is a hinge that will actually be used to repair one of the doors in the fort itself. So it is a functioning interpretive center. Again, this is in Fort Calhoun, Nebraska, and we certainly encourage, again, anyone who's traveling the trail to make their way by there. And despite the fact that this, of course, was not there when Lewis and Clark came by, when you go to see the First Council site, this makes for a very interesting and informative educational stop along the way. And, of course, we mentioned last week their website, and you can learn more about them online. And, of course, cooling the iron there that they're working. So again, a very nice historic stop along the way. We left that area there, and I think if we can, Jim's going to set us up for this next piece of B-roll bit here, but one of the things, we had stayed in Boyer Chute for several days, and Boyer Chute was not a very deep body of water, and so and it's very swift current. It's just a chute off of the Missouri River, and here as we get ready to take the boat out, we actually use the aft anchor to align ourselves downstream. And one of the downfalls, of course, to using the anchor sometimes is, and particularly when we're in the water for so long, is it'll get a little bit tough to get it out of the sand and mud. And so I had, once again, the great pleasure of taking one more dip in that body of water, which had provided us with a good swimming hole for a week or so. And so we finally got ourselves out of Boyer Chute and made our way then from there up toward Blair, Nebraska, just a few miles to Cottonwood Marina, where we were able to do some boat maintenance and that sort of thing for a couple of days after the signature event. And here you see the boats traveling upstream toward Blair, Nebraska, and Cottonwood Marina. And this was another beautiful day on the river. The weather has been quite mild, actually. It had been some relatively warm days there last week, but this past week has been extremely mild. And here we are passing under the Highway 30 bridge, and this was a nice stop for us. It allowed us to, as I mentioned, do some boat maintenance that we were unable to do there in Boyer Chute because of its remote location, and sort of get ourselves set up for what would be the next major operational activities for us as we are here at Decatur, where we're interacting with Native Americans. We made an en route stop the other day. What's very interesting, the river today is so much different than it used to be. We are able on occasion to find a nice sand beach to bring the boats into or something like that, but the river is very swift, and the narrow channelization is cause for some concern, and navigation is something that's very a little bit hairy out here sometimes. Here, for example, at a middle of the day stop, we were unable to bring the keelboat into this space because of wing dikes and things along the side, and so what we're using the pirogues for, much like the original expedition, was ferrying the men from one side of the river to the other. When we found a safe place for the keelboat, then we could bring the men over. And there we are presenting a flag to the Hunts. And these are the folks who have been hosts to us there midday. And then we're making our way on up into the this is actually coming into Decatur. What we don't have on here is that we had one more stop in here, and we did stop at the mouth of the Little Sioux. Now, 200 years ago, the river, it was approximately 1,609 miles from the mouth of the Missouri River to Fort Mandan. Today it's 1,350 miles roughly, and so the mouth of Little Sioux is our halfway point. So we're just past our halfway point, and here we are coming into Decatur, Nebraska, which is the southeast corner of the Omaha Indian Reservation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but we're sitting right now at mile marker 691, so we are just a little over halfway on our trip this year. And there you see the boats coming in for a docking there. We're just beaching them there at Decatur at the mouth of a small slough that runs up into the town. And again, it's been just a beautiful week weather-wise, although the last couple of days, we had a little rain day before yesterday, and then last night we had a pretty good shower last night, but overall the boats are doing well. And here we are at Macy, just outside of Macy at the Omaha Tribal Reservation. Tribal building here with, that's Donald Grant, the chairman of the Omaha tribe, and we were very pleased. 200 years ago to the day, yesterday, the 11th of August, we actually raised the flag as they did. And they did it over Blackbird Hill. Blackbird Hill is now privately owned, and so we used a hill right there by the tribal council area to do that. And in tandem with the Omaha Nation, we actually raised an anachronistic flag, one of the pennant flags. The journals record that they used a white flag bound with red, blue, and white, which we believe were like ribbons, and we're not quite sure exactly what that flag looked like. However, we used one of our pennant flags with a large white field on it, and tied that together with the Omaha flag, and it was a great honor for us, and I think it was an honor for the Omaha people as well who were there to see those flags flying together on that hillside. It was quite a spectacular sight yesterday, and an emotional one for everyone involved. Here you see Bob Anderson, who is the collateral descendant of George Shannon, and he's the gentleman who's moving around the backside there of the other fellow, taking the flag out. Bob Anderson is going to be fixing that flag there. And this is a special flag that he had made, one of the pennant flags. Many of the flags from this period, there's discrepancy about them. One of the things about this period in American history, because our army was so small and because it was peacetime, there are so many things that we have to speculate about, so many things that we do not have definitive answers about, and including the flags. The flags are one of the examples of that, and so we have a number of different variations of the flags that might have been used at that time based upon good scholarship, but nonetheless not necessarily definitive. And we want to always point that out to our viewers, that while we do the best to tell the story of Lewis and Clark, there's also things about the story that people must understand are based upon scholarship and not necessarily artifacts or any existing artifacts in the period. So few of them survived. And here we are, both flags attached, and we're going to raise these flags and we'll post them on the hillside as the Corps had done 200 years ago.
Teleparty, free car. Free car, yo, Harlocks. Shoulder, yo, Harlocks. Toys, yo, Harlocks. Preset, yo, Harlocks. Let tyrants shake their iron rod and slavery flag.
After rendering honors to the flag of the United States, we took both flags on the pole up the hill, and there you see the Corps making their way up along the side of the hill, just as the Corps would have done 200 years ago, to the top of Blackbird Hill. And of course, Blackbird was the Omaha chief who had died about 4 years prior to the Corps' arrival there. He was a very famous chief, a well-respected and beloved chief of the Omaha. He was actually, the tradition holds that he was buried sitting on his horse, and he had died as part of a larger plague of sorts that had hit the Omaha people. About 400 of the Omaha people had died of smallpox in the year 1800, and those people, as well as their beloved chief, were buried on top of Blackbird Hill. And we'll actually be visiting that hill later today, although this is not the exact hill. It is nearby by that and near the Corps 2 Ten of Many Voices display. And here we are being treated to a traditional Native American prayer in the Omaha dialect of the Siouan language. Of course, the Discovery Expedition is deeply committed to First Nation issues, and this has been a very informative time for us as well. We always want to champion Native American causes as we make our way across the country. Part of honoring their traditions are learning from them and giving them the opportunity to share with us. And that's been a hard thing over the years for the Native American community to feel comfortable in sharing their traditions. In fact, for many years, it was actually sort of frowned upon in their society. And here we are, we'll listen to one of the honor songs that several members of the tribe are singing here. And there you see the contemporary flag of the Omaha tribe. And that flag that they presented with us will be flown on our red pirogue as we make our way past the traditional homeland of the Omaha people And here we are with Private Howard. Brian Deering portrays Private Howard, handing me a 15-star, 15-stripe Star-Spangled Banner flag, which we, in turn, are going to present to Donald Grant, the chairman of the tribe, as well as some many other gifts that we gave him, including a hawk pipe, a knife, tobacco, a medal, and it's part of our expression of respect for the tribe, and let them know how deeply appreciative we are of their willingness to work with us and to share their traditions with us. We do have an email question that came in about how many members of the Omaha exist today. The Omaha tribe is a large tribe. Curiously enough, unlike many of the tribes that we've talked about in the past, the Omaha did not relocate. They are located on their traditional homeland, although a much reduced piece of land it is compared to the vast area that their people controlled 200 years ago. They are on a small piece of land located just below South Sioux City, actually just below the Winnebago Reservation, and we're going to be talking about the Winnebago Reservation as well when we get up that way over the next week as well. So anyway, that's what's going on in the past week. It's been a very full week, tremendous amount of interaction with Native Americans, which is just an exciting part of the expedition for us. And what we're going to do now is we're going to come back here to Lewis and Clark State Park, and we're going to have the opportunity now to have a conversation with Mr. Butch Bovere, and we want to talk to him. Butch has been the builder of keel boats in the Onawa, Iowa area, and here at the Lewis and Clark State Park, which is home to his keel boats. And we're going to take an opportunity to talk with him a little bit and ask him a little bit about how he got involved in doing this. And he's been at it for, I guess, going on 30 years now, or 20 years now. We don't want to make him feel any older than he may anyway. And after doing this for so long, and so we want to find out a little bit about how you got involved. Thank you, Butch, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
Tell us a little bit about how did you come to get interested? First of all, and you mentioned to me earlier about that your interest was really the boats, not necessarily the greater story, but the boats were the focus of your interest. But what brought you to be involved in Lewis and Clark and keel boats?
Well, having always been a boat builder and a rivercraft builder and interested in the area of pre-steam, when they wanted to have their first festival here, they called me and said, could you build a model of the Lewis and Clark keel boat?
And what year was that?
84. And I said, yeah, I think I could do that. And the guy says, we're going to have to do some research. And I think you'll probably agree, as of last night or the night before, it was probably ongoing research. And it gets you hooked, you know. So we built the model. I said, gee, let's build the real thing. About that same time, Glenn was building your boat. And we just kind of went neck and neck from there. It's been a real fun thing.
Now, the first boat was built in '84, and I guess you've built several since then. But the first boat was built in 1984 for that festival. What then prompted the construction of additional boats over the years?
Well, I always wanted to change things and improve things. I love building the boats. We had people who requested them for museums and stuff. It actually turned into a business. I do it professionally now. And this last boat that we built was for my wife and I. And we wanted to do living history with it. More than that, education, hands-on education. And we wanted a boat that the kids could literally feel, touch, smell, and learn something from. You know, there's you fellows are doing a wonderful, wonderful reenactment. You're making Glenn very proud. But because of insurance, you can't let the kids on. We fill that niche. You know, we let them get on the board. We have a special policy to cover that. And I think we complement each other beautifully.
Absolutely. Now, I've got a question for you, just because we've talked a lot in the past about specs for our boats and things like that. Like, weight-wise, give us a little overview. Talk to us a little bit, if you would, about the boat we see sitting behind us right now. Can you give us a little bit? Well, first of all, and if we can, tell us a little bit about this boat. Needed some help a few years ago, and you had to come back and address it again. I mean, it's obviously your boat actually is in the water a lot more than ours is over the years. It's been in there, and you needed to come back and read and address it. If you share a little bit of that with us, but tell us a little bit about the boat and the specs about it.
Okay, this boat you see sitting behind you is called the Discovery. I named it in honor of the Corps Discovery. We have a tendency to name our replicas around here, and sadly, people don't do their research because the United States Post Office thinks that's what it was named, but neither here nor there. We named it Discovery. In 2000, it had deteriorated, and we thought we were going to rebuild it. Turned out to be virtually a brand new boat. We used standard construction techniques of the 1804 era, Very few wood preservatives other than the ones they would have used, trying to give that touch and that smell, but it is a maintenance nightmare, absolutely. And so we had to rebuild it. This boat weighs about 7.5 to 8 tons, and I think it's pretty close to the specs. Now, Glenn and I always had a little different opinion on the shape of the hull, whether it was flat bottom, round bottom, and we always were gentlemen about it and agreed to disagree. But other than that, it's similar to what you see in Clark's drawings, and as is yours. But we get down to the water line, we've made some changes.
Now you actually have another boat you've got. The most recent one is a little larger, and that one, I guess, and what we're trying to do is make sure people understand that the one that's sitting behind us is the 55-foot boat.
That is correct.
The one you had over at the signature event, a little larger, and the reason for that was to allow folks to go on there to have some safety and some area to move around on.
Absolutely. The one we had at the signature event is 3 foot wider and 3 foot longer than the original Lewis and Clark barge. But we did that because we wanted extra stability, we wanted extra safety, and we didn't feel, and I still don't feel, that it compromises our ability to educate and teach. But we make that very clear to people that it is not the proper size.
Okay, now you've got the boats here. How many people do you suppose? And you gave me, and you said that you probably weren't the best person to ask about this, but I mean, what do you think you've had boats sitting in the water here for a long time? What kind of traffic do you normally get? And then you mentioned that this year you had a real increase because of the bicentennial, I thought.
Well, the increase has grown exponentially since about 4 years ago. It had steadily increased, but boy, 4 years ago it just went crazy. We had a car counter last year that put $250,000 across it. Just visitors, just to come here to the park and get on board the boats and see them. I suspect that will slide off a little bit, but with the new visitor center and the increased interest in this country in hands-on living history, I think we're going to stay right up there. And just what those numbers might be, I don't know. But we're putting a lot of money in, banking on that it'll be good.
Well, talking about money, that's always and certainly something I think we all share in common is the issue of financing and those sorts of things. Obviously, I guess that, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I guess that first festival funded maybe the first boat there, but how do you all operate here? What is can you tell us a little bit about the folks who help make this possible financially?
People like you who put $1 in our donation box when you walk out the door. These boats are maintained by volunteers. Although I built them, they belong to the state. They're maintained by volunteers, and all of the money put into the boats to maintain them is donation money. Now, my company, the ones that we own, like Best Friend, the big one that we were talking about, that one came right out of my hip pocket, which is about broke me, by the way, and we're going to do living history with it. But the ones at the park are all donation money and volunteer time, and it's amazing.
I saw a lot of guys running around here with DNR patches on. What is their relationship to your operation?
The Department of Natural Resources owns and operates this park. The Friends of Discovery, the group that is gathered up to make all this happen, operates under their blessing. It's a volunteer group, and they are the sponsors for that group. And between the Friends of Discovery and the county and the state, we're doing this building over here. We get a lot of people. In fact, if you want to include me, you got private enterprise involved.
So you mentioned early on that you had interest in pre-steam boats. Now, what other kind of boats have you built over the years?
We've done steamboats. We're getting involved in center cabin keelboats, 1828, 1840 vintage, and
the western keelboats.
Anything pre-steam. Yeah, my interest pretty much goes from the time the Pilgrims landed up until the last keelboat went to Fort Benton, and that was 1850s.
Okay, now describe for us, and you've got two other boats over here. You've got the two pirogues over here as well. Describe for us. And a lot of people have seen images of this. Your boat, is there a keel on it?
Well, there is a keel, but not a large protruding keel. Ours doesn't come down as deep as yours. It's not as heavy and strong.
Okay, how just out of curiosity, how deep is it? Because we haven't seen it. I'm just kind of curious.
The bottom of the boat has a very slight V to it, maybe 5 degrees, and the keel protrudes another 6 inches beyond that.
Okay. And now you have kits for yours as well. Is that right? Now those, and I don't know, are those kits you produced? Are those kits you produced?
Something I put together and the friends group here sells, and then I donate all the money to the boats and stuff and to the friends.
Does it have and does that follow the designs of your vessels?
You know, pretty much. It's a 13-inch model, so you can't get a lot of detail in it. But school kids just love it. I would liken it to a Pinewood Derby car model. It's basically roughed out of basswood and go from there.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess the one thing that we all are happy about is the fact that finally, and I know this is one of the things that Glenn used to always harp on, was the fact that we finally maybe have set the record straight a little bit about the fact that Lewis and Clark weren't two guys in coonskin caps going up the Missouri in a birch bark canoe.
Yeah. Glenn was, I met Glenn on 4 occasions, and I was out of town. I mean, I was way out of town when he passed away, or I'd have made it back for the funeral. But man, what a guy. I had nothing but the utmost respect for him, and nothing but the utmost respect for what you guys are doing.
Well, listen, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I want to take a minute and talk with Dan Corcoran, who's working on that. Thank you very much, Butch. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much.
And again, if you get a chance to come up to Lewis and Clark State Park in outside of Onawa, about 2 miles west of Onawa, up at Blue Lake, we'd sure encourage you to do so. As Butch mentioned, it is a great opportunity to be able to step on the boats. Obviously, with what we're doing, we've got marine insurance because we're actually moving on the river there that precludes us from bringing folks on board, and so we once again would encourage you to get a chance to come by here and put $1 in the box, as he mentioned. So, Dan Corcoran, thank you for making waves. Glad to meet you. And we wanted to find out a little bit about the Visitor Center here and what's happening. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people crossing the country over the next, hopefully many years, because we certainly feel that the interest in the bicentennial is going to probably exceed and extend beyond. In fact, yesterday there were some folks talking about what we were going to have to do at the White House for the 1807 party at the White House, and then I guess everybody's looking to shoot me in 1809, so in 2009. So at any rate, this thing's going to be going on for a long time, and hopefully this is sort of a rejuvenation of American history, and this is a big chapter in it. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over here at the new Visitor Center.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I'm the project director. My main function is fundraising, although we're taking care of some administrative things also. We started the fundraising about 3 years ago. We're up to about $5.3 million now. About half of that is cash and grants, and another half is what we call in-kind or non-cash gifts. That includes the mound of dirt that it's sitting on, which raised it up 20 feet above the lake level, and other things. So everything, including the kitchen sink, is included in that $5.3 million. We expect that by the time we're finished, we're going to have about $6.5 million. So the building is 80% complete now. There's just a portion of the roof that needs to go on, and then they'll go inside and work during the winter months and do all the drywalling. We're going to have a floor of exhibits. In addition to these boats, the 3 boats that you've talked about, we'll go inside the building to keep them from inclement weather during the winter. We'll attract a lot more people in here all year long than we have already. And we hope that all the exhibits, which are interactive and educational for children, mostly children of all ages, but we hope that will be done about April 1st.
Now, is the state helping you out with this? Because, I mean, one of the things that's happened with a lot of the visitor centers that we've seen, the Lewis and Clark themed centers, and this has been something that has come up in the past, that a lot of them are located near, obviously because of the river, are located near state borders. And I didn't know, if it figured in here, because I know at some of the other visitor centers it has figured into the plan that while the primary focus, at least at this present time, is the Lewis and Clark story, that at some point the facility might have a greater role as far as a welcome center to the state.
Absolutely. It is a visitor center, and Iowa has 2 types of visitor center. One they call a welcome center, and the other is a visitor center. This is a visitor center, and we'll have, as I mentioned, interactive educational exhibits in it, in addition to the reproductions of the boats.
Is the state helping out with this ever?
Yes, this is, as Butch the Boatwright mentioned, is truly a private public partnership. The state, which is the DNR, or Department of Natural Resources has done all of the architectural work, etc. The county here, which is Monona County, has provided $2 million worth of dirt for not only the building but the parking lot, which will be about 5 times the building size. The building is over 15,000 square feet. In addition to that, we've got private money. We've got the Department of Transportation, the county, as I mentioned, the DNR, private money in the Onawa area is about $300,000 donated from a town of 3,000 people. In addition to that, we've gotten a community attraction and tourism grant out of the Vision Iowa program, which is in Des Moines. They've provided $900,000 for the construction of the building. So we have multiple sources and multiple grants that need to be matched, and we still need $1.2 million.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to need a big plaque on the side of the wall for all those people helping out. Now, when do you anticipate it being completed?
We hope that all the exhibits are finished by April 1st of 2005. We've had a work stoppage because the state didn't want to give state money to a state run facility, and so we switched the ownership from the state of the building to the county. And when we did that, the DNR stopped paying the bills, and they then got reimbursed from the grants, and we still have about $1.4 million in grants that we can't access. So we've had a temporary stoppage, but it's temporary, and we're working with the bank. In fact, I meet with them this afternoon.
Now, is there a for the overall state park and for the whole operation here? Is there an online place for people to go learn more about what's happening here? Is there a website?
Yes, the park has a website that's part of the Iowa State Park System. We'll also have a website for this building, but we don't have it just yet.
In fact, I don't know, Jim, have we taken a look at the building yet? Just to show folks what's up and coming here. Now there you see, and maybe you can describe for us. I guess it's a pretty good sized complex. As you know, we built a building ourselves in St. Charles, and to house our boats, and a little different construction, but a good sized building like this, and it is quite a large undertaking. I think we're all learning a great deal about financing as we engage in these projects, and how the government can and cannot help us with regard to some of those funding issues. But thank you very much. We appreciate you, Dan, taking the time today to be with us. And if we can come back real quickly to us here, once again, Dan Corcoran, and there you see the boats in the background. And just a few minutes before we leave today, first of all, do we have any email questions that we want to address yet? I don't know if we'll check real quickly. One of the things before we get out of the park here today is, if we can, but maybe we can end at the end of the show with a shot of one of the curiosities here in this park is a 200-year-old. Actually, they estimate it's probably near 250 years old. Cottonwood. Now there are some big cottonwoods in this grove of trees that we're standing in right here. As I mentioned, there was a WPA project here many years ago that built a small lodge here, and that lodge was built sort of in a cottonwood grove. But there is one tree here that has been dated at over 250 years, or something in the area of 250 years, and it is still alive. It's lost a lot of its upper limbs. Maybe you'll be able to see a shot of that in just a little while. Before we do that, though, we are going to. I want to go. One other person who's joined us today is Kenny Altergott, and I'd like to go to Kenny for just a second. Thank you again, Dan. And we'll go to Kenny Altergott, and many of you may have seen Kenny in the past. Kenny is the pilot of the keelboat Columbia, which is our boat that we're using on the expedition. And we were talking with Butch about his boats and the construction things, and just wanted to check with you and find out how's the trip going right now. How's the boat handling for you as you move it up the river?
I feel that the boat handles very well, considering that it's a 200-year-old design, and it was made for going slowly through the water. And now that we are moving at approximately 4 miles an hour trying to maintain it, it handles very, very well. It rows very well. It sails. We tried cordelling it, which is pulling it by a rope, and I am just amazed at the response of a 55-foot boat with a rudder off of the back that you control by hand. So when I wanted to move someplace to do something, it is very responsive. I just think it's a wonderful design, and the work that was done on the boat with the laying of the keel, which I feel gives us a lot of stability with the side winds from blowing us. It holds us on track so that we're not sliding across the river sideways.
Well, that's an interesting point because there was, in fact, I was actually interviewed for a Discovery Channel film that was released 2 years ago or something, and talking about our experiences with keelboat. And they had an expert, and that's always a sort of a specious term sometimes. They had an expert, I believe he was from Massachusetts, who talked about the instability of a vessel designed as ours is, based upon what Glenn had researched, and the work that Glenn had done, the work that he had done to research what the actual boat looked like, John Walker's types boats, the canal boats, and that sorts of thing. We've had some pretty heavy weather out here, and we've got a pretty, and actually one of the things that he talked about was cargo issues when the boat was heavy and laden, about instability issues. And have you noticed really any instability with the vessel?
No, I have not. It's hard to describe the hull design. I would say that when the boat was designed, it was designed with what they had at 200 years ago, and I would say the only stability that we would have is if a boater would come up behind us very, very slow and throw a tremendous stern wake at us. We had to be prepared for that because the boat was not designed for it. But otherwise than that, the boat is the safest boat there is. The wind can blow from the side, and it heels a little bit, but it comes right back. Like I said, when I was asked to be the pilot and the first captain on the boat, I was very happy, and I was apprehensive. And now that I've had the boat for quite a while under my hands, I cannot say enough about the design of the boat. It just handles absolutely wonderful.
And of course, as you mentioned, with regard to those bow wakes and things like that, Lewis and Clark never had to deal with other boaters throwing wakes at them, did they? There weren't any wave runners on holiday weekends running one side or the other. Thank you very much, Kenny, for joining us this morning. Once again, Ken Altergott, and we appreciate that. And if you want to, actually, Ken's an interesting fellow. Sometime we'll have to talk about just some of your experiences on the Great Lakes and things like that. So Ken's been a boater, and we're proud to have him as part of the expedition today. We're going to leave today. We've got one email question we're going to answer real quickly about what's the disposition of our boats at the end of the year when we get to Washburn, North Dakota, where Fort Mandan is located this year. Our boats will be taken out of the water, as they took their boats out of the water 200 years ago. They got them out of the water, out of the ice. We will get ours out of the water, and hopefully not out of the ice. We're hoping to dodge the bullet a little bit on ice maybe before we get up there. But the boats will be taken back to St. Charles, Missouri, where the work will be done over the winter to prepare them for their outing next year. We encourage folks to always stop by St. Charles, by the boathouse. There's always something going on there. There's always somebody working on something there, whether or not it's one of the big boats, maybe one of the small prototype boats we're working on right now. But at any rate, we certainly appreciate those good questions. We appreciate your viewing with us today. We look forward to seeing you next week when we broadcast next Thursday with Live with Lewis. And remember, as we get closer to the school year here, now that school's back in session, that we'll be starting up our every other week we'll be doing a video conference based upon a number of educational and curriculum-based so please look to our website to find out about those. We encourage you to join us, and if you're a teacher, to have your students on board for that. And we thanks you all. We appreciate Dean Clausen being here today. We didn't get to him today, but we appreciate him being here and bring his expertise to bear. And we're going to leave you now with a shot of a 250-year-old cottonwood, and you can tell it by the gnarly branches on it. And here, once again, we're coming to you from Lewis and Clark State Park near Onawa, Iowa. Until next time, we proceed on.